Hello everyone, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about Batsa reading, basically a general overview, some of the basic ways to start looking at your Batsa to be able to understand it. And this overview does largely come from the class that I've just taken. But before I talk about the details, there is one thing that's really important for you to understand is that Batsa is only really about 1/3 the influence on your path in life. So whether or not you even know your Batsa isn't as important as you might think. So this basically means you don't blame your Batsa for things that go wrong in your life unless you keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And then that might be an issue. If you make a mistake, that's nothing. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. If you learn from that mistake, then your Batsa is not having a negative effect on you. Now, your Batsa in general gives you natural skills or talents, things that you can learn easily and usually rather deeply. It could be even you can learn physical things, that is, like muscle memory and all this stuff. Some people are better with muscle memory than others. They are able to develop their physical skills more than maybe their mental skills, although usually the two go together. Because to be a good player in any kind of team sports, you also have to think a lot, and at least you have to have at least average ability there. But if you're in a single thing like maybe weightlifting, then that still does require intelligence, but it requires a lot more physical strength. So your Batsa might be able to give you some of that. But most people, if they're given the opportunity to experience various things, will naturally go towards what is their easy skills, because people are generally on the lazy side. Now, everybody has some skill or talent that is their strongest, and often this can be seen in your Batsa. You may have talents that are very close to one another, and sometimes that's hard to differentiate which one's the strongest. But if they're that close together, maybe you don't have to worry about which one you choose. Either one can work for you. Now, what you do with your talent makes all the difference in how your life turns out. I think everybody knows this, but I think some people are looking for some kind of magic, something in their Batsa that will somehow make their life easier. In general, no. You will maybe understand yourself better and maybe understand what you need to work on more. That can make your life better, but it probably won't make your life any easier in terms of you're still going to have to work hard. The only people that don't have to work hard are those who inherit a whole lot of money. And they usually spend it all and end up broke by the time they die anyway. So unless they also work hard. They can work hard and they can make it grow if they're smart. But when you grow up rich, it's usually really hard to work hard because you've never had to. Now, your environment, for example, what was the situation financially for your family, and the decisions that you make, this is what makes the difference in how your life turns out. It's not really your Batsa. So the information that is going to come from this series of videos that I'm going to give, and there'll probably be maybe a dozen or more. One of basically the overall view of how you analyze a chart, just kind of how do you just look at it and start. That does come from EC Metaphysics, a class that I just took. However, I can't say that I got a lot out of it in terms of the details. And so I actually, when it comes to the details, I did not rely on this class. The details come partly from some videos by Edgar Loctinho, who I think is a better teacher. He gives you time to think, and not all of his videos are equally good, but I seem to be in sync with the way he's teaching better than EC. So now I've also gotten some good information from fengshui.com. Even though it says feng shui, it also talks about Bazi. And I did learn some things that I had trouble understanding from class through here. There's also 2 books, and I will be talking about them in future videos, and also some common sense. Now, I don't mean, well, their logic is involved, of course, that's part of common sense, but there is a certain level when you understand one of the Chinese metaphysics things, I mean, there's feng shui, there's Bazi, there's, Qi there's all those. Once you understand one of these things, and you understand it well, you develop a certain logic when it comes to Chinese metaphysics. And it is really quite consistent. There are a few little things here and there that you look at slightly differently, but it really, really makes sense when you look at the thing as a whole. And so I use that too, and that made me say, well, I don't think that this little piece of a practice makes sense. And I will talk about that. You will see me talking about that in separate videos. This one is pretty general, so there's not too much there. So these you'll see this if you ever take a class. You will see something that looks like this. Your Bazi tells you basically what skills, talents you're born with, kind of what is the starting point. Your Bazi and your luck pillars are set from the time and date of birth. And there's nothing you can do about these. This is what you're given, that's it. So the best thing to do here is just see what it says your skill is. Now, the environment that you're in is equally important. Now, it is actually true that certain environments can favor certain types of Bazis. If you are in a country that has a lot of war or has a lot of hunger and things are really tough, or you've grown up in an abusive environment where you had to be tough, if you don't have at least some 7K in your Bazi, you might not survive that. You might not survive to adulthood. Or your family might not survive even if you do, because if you don't have enough 7K, you're not tough enough, you're not resilient enough, you don't have enough energy, you don't have enough strength. I mean, all these things come with 7K. So if you're in a difficult environment, having at least a decent amount of 7K is very important. Now, of course, too much is never good. And if you're even on the high side and you're in an environment that is very supportive, the too much 7K, even a high level of average 7K, can be a bit of an issue unless you can find a physical outlet for that energy. And usually you can. I mean, you'll have sports. Now, the biggest difference is choices. The choices you make have at least an equal influence. In fact, I think it has more. When you're a child, you really can't change your environment. You can as an adult. Sometimes it's very difficult to do because of family obligations and things, but you can choose to change your environment, at least to some extent. But it doesn't matter what environment you're in, it's your choices that you make will actually determine your path in life. So obviously, this is the one you really have control over. You have no control over your Bazi. You have limited control over your environment, but your choices are yours. Now, sometimes these choices are very, very, very hard. They can be painful even, but making the right choices can make all the difference. Now, there is a sweet spot where all these things come together. You have the person with the right batza in the right environment that makes the right choices, and they tend to have the best outcome. Now, the best outcome will be for whatever they want. I mean, for me, a best outcome is enjoying your job, uh, having good family relationships, having enough money to retire without worrying about not necessarily that you can spend a ton of money, but that you have enough money set aside so that if something goes wrong with the house, you can have it fixed. You don't have to borrow money after you're retired, which is usually quite hard to do. At least that's my understanding. And you can, and you'll also, if you have kids, that you have enough money to send them to college so that they don't have to borrow money and be saddled with all this. Now, the kids are going to have to lower their standards. They're not going to live like they lived when they lived at home, but they'll survive. And this is really good, I think, very good for them to have a really good idea of the real cost of going to college. So, and that will make them better students, and because they will know how tough it is. And so that to me is good. Now, other people may want fame. That is, not only do they want all what I'm talking about, they also want to have a certain amount of notoriety or at least be famous within their field, if not publicly. Now, for me, since I have 0 HO in my Batza chart, I've never cared about fame. In fact, I never wanted fame. In fact, I kind of like, let's not, if I'm going to become famous, it can only be in a small field where when I go to a conference, people may recognize me, but I can walk down the street and nobody will bother me. You know, I could never be otherwise famous because I would be too uncomfortable. Now, reading a Batza is quite complicated if the chart has a significant number of the combinations, clashes, harms, punishments, or destructions. You don't necessarily have any of these, but you may well have 2 or 3. And if you have any more than one, it can get very complicated and can be kind of difficult to analyze. The chart without any of these complications, with none of these 5 interactions, they're really relatively rare. They're not that common. But if you have one, it's pretty easy to read based on the elemental mix that you have and the strength of the Daymaster. You have a decent idea about, what is your strengths, what is your weaknesses, what would be a good area to go into, not in terms of, which element the work is, because that is pretty meaningless nowadays, but what kind of job will you be able to use your natural skills to the biggest advantage? Now, most charts have at least one of these combinations, the interactions, but everybody will have this through time, at least some of these through time. Certainly clashes you're going to have through time, and you'll probably have some harms too, maybe even some punishments or destructions. Combinations are a little bit rarer because most of the combinations use 3 elements, and so you already have to have 2. So, but it could happen, and it does happen. In fact, it happens in my own chart with time, not otherwise. But then it becomes slightly more complicated. But if you only have one, it's not too bad. Now, all of these interactions can be positive or negative. So just because these have nasty names doesn't mean that the last 4 are necessarily negative. They can be positive under the right circumstances. And combinations can be negative. Now, in general, there are ways to overcome any of the negative interactions if you need to. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be easy to overcome them, but it's worthwhile to overcome them. I hope you understand the difference there. And there were also some special charts, which are quite, let's say, quite unusual in many aspects. Two examples of this are transformational charts and following charts. There's three different types of following charts. I'm going to cover these. I'm going to start actually probably with the transformational one for the heaven stems, because there's only two types of interactions in the heaven stem rather than the five that you'll find in the branches. So it all depends. If a combination produces an unfavorable element for your day master, it is usually a negative thing. And if a clash reduces a favorable element, that's also not good. But if it reduces an unfavorable element, it will be positive. So you have to know exactly what's going on. Now, the combinations can be in either the stems or the branches. And when we talk about stems, usually what we're talking about is only the heaven stems, not the hidden stems. The hidden stems, since there can be three in each of the branches, up to three, they can get extremely complicated to look at. And so most schools don't really look at that, but they do look at the combinations within the heaven stems. The clash will only occur in the branches, the animal signs. But you can also have combinations in the branches, and the last four, the punishments and all that stuff, that all comes in only through the branches. And there is a clash-like interaction in the heaven stems, but it's usually called a controlling interaction to easily define the difference between the two, so that it's a little less confusing. Although there are people who call it clash, but technically it's an interaction that comes through only the controlling cycle, not a opposite kind of clash cycle. Now, you really need to understand what the elements are in your chart. Which ones are favorable, which ones are unfavorable. And again, that depends on your day master and its strength. If a clash reduces the energy of an unfavorable element, it will very, very likely be a positive aspect of your chart. It can help you be more productive, because the thing that would otherwise be a bother to you just goes away. And if a combination produces an unfavorable element, it very likely will be a negative aspect, because it will it actually adds something to your chart that makes it harder for you to concentrate on the right things, basically, because it actually depends. If you have almost nothing in your chart, sometimes it's a good thing. But if you already have a high level of that and you add more, that if you get to an unhealthy high level, then you become too obsessed with something, and it's a negative thing for you to move forward. Although in general, you'll enjoy it. It just won't let you move forward very fast. Now, the combinations, they can be in the stems or the branches. The branch combinations in generally are stronger than the heaven stem combinations, and that's usually when we talk about stem combinations, it really means heaven stem. The stem combinations are almost always focused on the heaven stems. Some practitioners do look at the hidden stems, but they may concentrate just on like the main chi. But you can have up to three in a single pillar in the hidden stems, and that can get very, very complicated. A lot of practitioners do not bother, because the interactions that are important actually come through the animal signs, which in effect does come through the branches, but they're looking at it in a more uniform way. And it's easier to understand, and you're still taking the hidden stems into account when you're doing this. Now, I'm going to be covering various types of combinations and some of the important concepts surrounding this, and also discuss the implications for individuals' charts. Now, these are dates that exhibit something that not people that I've done any analysis for, because I don't do Batsa analysis, but I do see their charts, and they're hard to find. You sometimes have to search for half hour or more before you find a chart that you're looking for. But and you just do it because you know what you're looking for. Now, different Batsa masters may have a different interpretation of the exact same chart. You can see this at the batsacalculator.com website. You can analyze your chart or anybody's chart in 3 different ways. That is 3 different methods. And even the Chinese Metasoft site will give you 2. And I don't know if you can get a free Batsa analysis from them. I do not have a subscription with the Batsa calculator, but I do with the Chinese Metasoft. And so so I can't really tell you what the Chinese Metasoft does with no subscription, but they do 2 different ones. And so you can see that your chart will have different things, that they will have, even when it comes to elemental balance, they read it differently. And this may not make a big difference for your chart. It may make a big difference. It all depends on some of the subtleties there and what they have counted and what they have not. Now, I have not seen any evidence that any one master is more correct or any one school is more correct than any other. But I've never had my chart analyzed, and I mean, I don't intend to, because I'm in my 60s. I know myself. I don't think that there's anything that the Batsa can add. And I'm not willing to pay for it. That is the big thing. Maybe if my business were to be really good, I might actually pay for it. But right now, I'm just basically breaking even. Now, there are also these ideas that you can combine away an element, and you can transform a heaven stem. I will be covering these. These are some of the more complicated and parts of the interaction within your Batsa. And actually, for me, it is the books that do the best best description, because they tend to have thought about it a lot more when they give the directions. When they're writing it down, you just tend to think about it more when you're actually writing things down. Now, sometimes the combining away or transforming can be a positive thing, or it can be negative. Again, you have to look at what you have in your chart. If your day master is part of this combination, it may be possible to transform your day master, or you might even combine it away, and then you would you would be a lot less certain about who you are if that were the case. Now, there are ways to deal with this, but it's not easy. I mean, it requires some real effort on your part. But if you feel your day master, the one that your Batsa chart says you have from your time and date of birth, if it doesn't seem to describe you very well, you may well have such a chart that something has been combined away or you've had something transformed. They are quite rare, but there are people that do have this. Now, there are quite a few conditions that are required for a transformation to occur. Even combining away requires certain things, not as much as transformation. But I'll cover this in some following videos, so we'll get there. It will just take a little time. This is it is actually very, very complicated. And one of the reasons why I think I don't enjoy Batsa is because it's so fussy. And there are so many different schools also. Now, other pillars, other than your day pillar, can transform in the same way, but remember, your other pillars only affect part of your life, and really not a lot of your personality. It's more maybe interactions with others or your view about that part of your life. It doesn't really change who you are. Whereas if you have your Daymaster transform, you will feel the difference. Now, different schools have different ways of analyzing your Vatsa. They also may put different emphasis on different things. So just because you hear something from one school and it says something about you, and you hear something else from a different school that says something different about you, doesn't mean a whole lot. You probably can decide which school fits you better by what you know about yourself, especially if you're not a teenager or in your early 20s. By the time you're in your mid 30s, you have a pretty good idea of who you are. And then you can decide which school seems to fit you better, if this is your goal. But I have seen some, very big differences that don't seem to be disagreed upon. That is, all the schools say the same thing, but that doesn't really seem to fit me either. So sometime, remember, Vatsa is only 1/3, so maybe that's what's going on. It's everything else I've experienced that makes me different. Now, I have no preference for any given master. And remember, your environment that you're in, the choices you make are actually 2/3 of what your life will be. So Vatsa does not rule your life. And let's say I'm a living testament to that. I have seen real discrepancies between what my Vatsa predicts for me and my reality. And the biggest one is about spending and saving money. My Vatsa says I should earn money very easily and have an almost impossible time to save. The opposite is true. I've never earned a lot, but I save money very, very well. And so this is probably my upbringing. Both my parents lived through the Great Depression of the 1930s, and they were, of course, affected by it. So they were very careful with money. And that has rubbed off on me. And since I've never made a lot of money, but I know it cost a lot of money in retirement, and given how long they lived after retirement, I knew there's a very good chance I would also have to save a long time. So so saving became important to me even at a very young age. Maybe not as a teenager, but once I left home, it became very important. Now, do not let your beliefs about your Vatsa define your life. If you have a clash, don't let that define your life. That clash might be good for you. You just say, oh, I have a clash, it's terrible. You don't know. You have to figure it out. If you're not going to pay somebody to do it for you, you're going to be able to figure it out with these series of videos that I'll make. Your clash could actually be very good for you. Now, there are always ways to overcome challenges your Vatsa presents you. These methods will also be covered. Sometimes you don't have to worry about it at all. Sometimes you have to put some effort into certain things to be able to overcome. Now, the methods that you use to overcome something probably are not going to be things you enjoy. But then you have to make the decision. Do you do the work that needs to get done? Or do you just goof around? If you goof around, that's fine. You can do that. Your life won't change. These things that you have to do to help overcome a negative clash are things that you simply are going to either be lucky enough to have them come in a luck pillar, or you might have them actually in your Vatsa, in your natal Vatsa, or you put the effort in and you do it. All three ways can work. It just depends what's in your chart and in your luck pillar. Now, this is basically really the overview. And I think most people understand all this. First thing you do is you find your Daymaster and you determine its strength. Now, Joey App will tell you what your Daymaster is, but he never talks about strength. So you're going to have to go to the VatsaCalculator.com or or maybe the Chinese Metasoft site. I actually like that one better. It's a little more, it tells you a lot more information. And they do allow short period subscriptions. You just have to remember to cancel it. But that would be probably helpful. And I think there's also a 2-week something where you can just check your chart. Now, you also need to determine your elemental breakdown. This will tell you where your strengths and weaknesses lie. And then once you've done that, which is the basic stuff, then you have to look for the combinations, all the 5 interactions, the clashes, punishments, destructions, harms, all of these. And you really want to focus just on your natal chart. There will be some of these things, especially like a clash. Everybody knows every 12 years you're going to have a clash with your year animal and so forth. So this is something that you look at, and there are ways to deal with this. Again, you don't have to be too worried about this. Now, the combinations of any of these, or the interactions, I could say, they can be positive or negative. Combinations aren't always positive. Sometimes they're negative. And the punishments, clashes, destructions, harms, they can actually be positive or they can be negative. Of course, these two, they're kind of, I guess you could say that most of the time a clash is negative, but it can be positive. Now, here's the hard part. You have to determine what all these 5 interactions mean to you in your chart. And so if you have more than one of these 5 interactions, then they kind of compete in terms of energy. And so you have to understand what you could do to overcome the negative part and maybe boost the positive. Sometimes boosting it isn't great. Sometimes it's perfect the way it is, but certainly overcoming anything negative is important. And but you have to balance it. Sometimes you get one thing is positive, another is negative, and if you change the one thing, maybe you change the other one too, and so maybe it's a wash. I mean, there's a lot to look at, and this is what gets very, very, very hard. So this is where intuition comes into play. You have to have a feeling for what is more important. And this is the hard part. This is why you can have Batsa practitioners make money, because intuition is the thing that's hard to get and the thing that's the most important for any chart that has any of the interactions. Now, depending on your goals and your environment, any of these interactions can help, they can harm, or sometimes they have very little effect on you because they don't have anything to do with your goals. Usually they have some effect, but they could have only a little effect. And so again, the intuition is where, when you chalk everything up, when you calculate everything, when you get everything done, what is the most important thing? That is that intuition that I do not have. But when you can get this is when you become a good practitioner. Now, if you want to deal with an issue in your life, or maybe you're trying to help others using Batsa, the key is you need to find the root cause of a problem. I mean, we all know that. And that's true no matter what, whether or not you're using Batsa or not. If you can't find the root cause of a problem, you tend not to be able to solve it. It's very easy to see the symptoms of a problem, but unless you can see the root cause, the problem rarely stays fixed, sometimes isn't fixed at all. And this is this is where Batsa might be able to help. If you really understand Batsa, oftentimes you can figure out exactly where you need to do something to improve whatever you're trying to improve. It's this again is part of that intuition that you have to develop. That When something shows as a problem, what is usually the root cause? And that takes experience. Now, this again is part of the intuition a Batsa practitioner needs to acquire. And and if I were interested in Batsa, which I'm really not, but it would be, I think it's a lot easier to make money as a Batsa practitioner than as a Feng Shui practitioner. And I think they make more money. They and the and that's because a lot more people are interested in themselves and not so much where they're living, because maybe like me, they move a lot just because that's the way life is in certain places anyway. And so they're not so interested, in the in what's going on in their house, especially if they don't spend much time there. They're always out working. I can understand that. So, but if you're going to pick up one thing and you want to earn some money, if you can develop the intuition, I think Batsa is a better one to pick up. It's I think you can make more money because people are always interested in themselves. Now, I can't help you develop this intuition because I don't have it. You may have to study with somebody for some time, and to become a good practitioner, I think you do have to study with somebody. It's a little hard to say. I mean, I've only taken the one class, and I have to say I'm not sure I would recommend it. The only good part is it was pretty cheap, relatively speaking, anyway. Certainly a lot cheaper than Joey Yap's. But his is so outrageously expensive, I never even considered taking it. Hopefully you can find somebody. And if you can find somebody local, it's even better, because then you can read and ask questions. And usually that'll be the cheapest way to do it. But they have to agree. Now, I do use some basic understanding of a person's Batsa when I perform a Feng Shui analysis. And this is important because, of course, I need to know your Qua number, so I know what are your good directions. I also want to know where the clashes exist, because if you have a very small kitchen, it may require some very precise placement of certain things in the kitchen, really just the range and the sink is the only super important things. But all that has to be understood to do a good job in Feng Shui, and so that is the parts I use in Batsa for Feng Shui. So I've always known a little bit about it. So I'd like to thank you for watching. There's probably not much questions you will have from this one because it's just an overview. But if you do have anything you want me to clarify a bit, please either leave a comment or email me here. And if you find these useful, I would love to have $1 or $2 at my coffee store. I do have a thing. I have goals that I would like to take some more classes, but I'm not going to do that unless I get my funding goal made. So it's sort of a GoFundMe, but it's not GoFundMe on GoFundMe. It's GoFundMe on coffee. So thanks again for watching.